stream. I think this should be it. Yep. Let me know if you can hear me properly. Cool. Okay. So so today in class we're going to talk a little bit about MongoDB. But before we get into that, has everyone even heard of MongoDB? Just raise your hands if you have. All right. So what are the databases you're currently familiar with so far? Let's walk down the list. Who wants to just? MySQL. What else? Firebase. What else? MongoDB. Well, soon. So MongoDB and Firebase are very similar. They'll still save JSON objects as documents in your database for you to walk through. Except one of the many benefits of MongoDB is that it has more enhanced querying options and is more of a production-ready database. There's more you can do with it. So we'll talk about all those different benefits soon. But first, I want to recap a little bit because I know you guys just did project number 2, right? Cool. I hope that's not a factor as to why this class is a little light today. But pretty much I'm trying to get an understanding of what were the positives from your project this time around. What did you guys feel like you learned this time versus project 1? And we can just go around the room. What do you feel like you learned with this one?
Probably don't push up stuff to get it too more.
Okay, so it's not necessarily a positive. We'll put it in the negative bracket.
I think you said what I learned.
Yeah. Oh, well, I guess, yeah. You can learn negative things too, right? Don't push your branch out too late. So let me add a bullet for that. Push commits too late. Say what?
It gets weird, so make local backups of your work.
Huh. Explain that. Because now I'm suspicious.
Well, we had a lot of issues where we would try to merge our work.
Okay.
It would just randomly decide to delete files.
Delete files.
Yeah. At one point, it was
Huh.
a server file. It was just
You sure that's not user error?
No, we would say merge. And
Yeah.
It tells you what it adds.
Yeah.
It does, and on there it would just be .rm server.js.
Huh.
We weren't 100% sure why.
Get
So,
merging.
yeah, before we merged or did anything, we just made a local backup copy. Just
Okay. Yeah, I guess you can't go wrong with that. Okay. Anything else? What are the things you learned in this project versus project 1? Became what? Clearer. Okay, SQLize became clearer. Do you feel like your collaboration skills were better this time around versus the first time? Yeah? How so? What do you think made a difference? The fact that you were more experienced, or maybe you were doing something different that was better?
I think folder structure now kind of coming with experience.
Okay.
Is helping because now you kind of know how all your folders are talking to each other and proper routing folder to folder. Because when I looked at our first group project, at the time seemed massive, and then compared to this one, it was night and day how much bigger, like folder structure wise, this project was.
Okay.
To that one, but it didn't feel like we were doing like that much more work.
Okay, you were just organized better. And I'm assuming that helped when it came to Git merging and your PRs and all that stuff.
I would get problems, but yeah, a little bit.
Sure. All right, let's get one more and then we'll move on. I think you had something to say.
I was going to say, we knew about the swim lanes in the last project.
Okay.
But we never used them. We used them this time, and I felt it was a lot. It was a lot easier to kind of be like, if you finish your tasks, to kind of be like, what else do we have to get done?
Sure. Okay, so better use of like creating backlogs and assigning work and all that stuff. Okay, that's good to hear. So yeah, so so this is definitely a pivotal point in your journey through Trilogy because the home stretch is within sight. So you definitely want to make sure that if there's anything that you're still unsure of or topics that you're still shaky about, now is the time to solidify your understanding because 2-3 weeks from now. I can't remember what topics you'll be going over again, but it does get exponentially more difficult because your focus is going to be on your final project. Your final project, because it's the final one, is your biggest project. That's the one that you're really going to push to hiring managers. That's the one you're going to be throwing on your resume. That's the one you're going to be promoting on your LinkedIn. So you need that to be good. And making sure you secure your foundation now is very pivotal. So on that note, just a few pieces of advice when it comes to demoing. The first 30 seconds are always the most important 30 seconds of any demo. You want to come out guns blazing. So either come out saying something incredibly interesting about your app or come out with a demo that shows immediately what it does and what makes it amazing, just to kind of like captivate the audience before you lose them in technical explanations and stuff like that. Practice, practice, practice. You know, always practice your demo and how you're going to present your application before you get there. Don't be afraid to take charge. So, for example, within your groups, if you feel like collaboration or swim lanes could be the best route, and you don't see your teammates, updating their tickets or doing the work that they need to do, definitely become a leader. And make sure that gets done because final project is also another group project, and you guys are going to be backing on each other for your success. Huh? Did I lose this? Let me try this again. There we go. All right. Some tips and tricks. Maybe add a GIF to your GitHub README. You can screen record your demo and then just throw that in a GIF form and attach it to your README. That's a nice way to kind of like fancy things up and wow potential hiring managers when they come and take a look at your project. Make sure you have a guest login. This is very, very important. There's been many times where I've had people provide their resumes with links to their projects, but I can't log in because authentication doesn't work, and there's no guest login and no information about that. So, so keep that in mind. Write a tutorial. What else? List your niche skills in LinkedIn. I hope you guys are already doing that. As you learn topics in class, you should be updating your LinkedIn profile with all the different technologies that you're learning. Hopefully by the end of this week, you can throw Mongo on that list, list your projects, and also consider writing each other recommendations. That always helps. You guys are each other's best resources because you have become intimately more familiar with each other, so you know the many benefits that your group members provide. It's always nice to write those recommendations on LinkedIn. Hiring managers also pay attention to that. So, any questions on some of those tips? Scotch.io. So I breezed over this one because this one was not my tip, but I believe you can throw a tutorial on Scotch.io and get paid for it. So for example, if your project maybe uses some technology that you have now turned into like a little mini tutorial, you can publish it there and they'll pay you for that. Yep.
So, like, if there was a certain approach or something that you found in the project too, it worked well, make a little blog post. Like, I'm not saying everybody will read it, but like, it looks good to the players.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Everyone loves a social developer.
Just some like history that like
Yeah. Any other tips like that? Because that was a good one. Meldium is definitely a good resource for promoting your knowledge and what you know. Cool. Well then, the road ahead. Let's see. So we're going to be moving on to MongoDB, and then we're going to also talk about React in a few weeks. I'm not sure if Meteor.js is still on the list of things to do. Nathan might actually change that. But then we'll also talk about algorithms, and then eventually you're almost there. So let's see. I already went over this. It's time to double down. Just to reiterate that point, your instructors and your TAs are your best resources. Reach out to them, reach out to them, reach out to them. Now is the time to get your foundation really solidified. All right, MongoDB. So, MongoDB is another very popular NoSQL database. It uses document-oriented models. Document is pretty much, you can think of it simply as a JSON object. MongoDB stores this data in Bison format, compressed JSON. It has a bunch of different drivers. That means you can use MongoDB with multiple languages, whether it's JavaScript, Java, Node, whatever. They have a driver that you can use to communicate with your MongoDB database. I don't know if you guys like keep up to date with like tech security updates and stuff like that, but Mongo actually had a huge security breach sometime last year because the IT guys who set it up or the developers who set it up just used default credentials. So people were able to log into people's public MongoDB databases with admin, no password, and access everything. So keep that in mind. You know, even though a database is popular, simple security tips are always should be on the forefront. So when you are having your own production MongoDB database, ensure that you have at least changed at minimum the admin password. So just keep that in mind. So the way it compares to relational databases, you have a typical table that has pretty much a foreign key association to another table. So as you can see, you have titles, author, and published, and you have the author foreign key in one table that points to the author table itself, which has emails and phone numbers. To get all that data, you have to use a SQL join to get it all. Mongo tries to simplifies that by using a JSON object. So instead of relationships, you would just throw all the information within the JSON object itself. And then you would query on things like the ID, the title, and then the author, and so on and so forth. Some of the benefits of this is that with SQL is very strict. You can't insert into a table unless you know what columns exist. Sometimes you need to know the data types of those columns. With Firebase, as you're already familiar with, you can change your object type as much as you want on the fly. It also makes it very flexible when it comes to agile development. There's a lot less hoops you have to hop through. Questions on that? The differences between a regular relational database like MySQL and MongoDB. Yep, you add a brand new key in that first object, which could be different to the second object. As long as you are aware it's there and you know how to query for it, you can access it.
This is JSON structure.
Pretty much, yeah, it's all JSON structure. Follows all JSON rules.
This isn't BSON?
So BSON is a JSON format, but it's like a compressed JSON format, so that you can store a lot of JSON data within the database. And it's compressed, and like they've got algorithms to try and keep that as small as possible.
Okay.
Yep.
Can you still query this like you would in SQL, like return everything where?
Yes, but Mongo has its own syntax. It has like I think you guys are familiar with SQLize, so it has like the .find, the .find ones, and it has its own way to query for stuff. All right, so there's some terminology you should be aware of. So Mongo still has the idea of a database, but a table is now known as a collection. So a collection is composed of multiple documents, and each document you can think of as a row in the table. So that would be each JavaScript object. Each JavaScript object that has its own uniquely identified attribute. So you have a database, which is composed of collections, which is composed of documents. That's how they usually use their terminology. So SQL term, database, table is a collection, a row is a document, and a column, which would be the keys in the JSON object, would just be a field. And that's how they relate to it in their documentation. Questions on that? So let's do a quick activity. You guys are going to Google some of the advantages of NoSQL, some of the disadvantages of NoSQL, and then also, well, yeah, that's pretty much it. And I'm just going to go around the room and get everyone to provide me some insight to what they found. This is a good exercise on being able to do research on technology you're unaware of and trying to sift through the bullshit that you find online, because there will be a lot of it. And so I'm definitely looking for very, very good advantages and disadvantages, not just something that came up in the very first link. So let's do this for like 5 minutes, and yeah, we'll get some answers. Hey Jane, could you Slack out that supplemental document installing MongoDB? Cool.
Can you put the question back up there?
Yeah, sure. Sure. Yes and no. You you probably shouldn't, but you can, because you can provide like so for example, let's say you had a student document and your student has classes, and that class now might point to another document that has a list of classes a student can take. You could maybe provide an ID within the key to the student, and then as you query, take the result of the first query and do a second query on the second document. And that's how you can provide a relationship, so to speak, but it's probably not the best way to do it. Mm-hmm. See, that is one of the reasons why I was hoping you could find it. But it should be in there somewhere. Probably class content instead of lesson plans. All right. You want to kick us off? Where are some advantages or disadvantages you found out about MongoDB?
Large volume of structured, semi-structured, and unstructured data.
What does that mean?
I have no idea.
Okay. All right. Say that one more time so I can hear it
It
again.
says large volumes of structured, semi-structured, and unstructured data.
Okay.
It says the advantages of NoSQL include being able to handle large volumes of structured, semi-structured, and unstructured data.
Got it. So what that means, if I was to break it down, is that it just speaks to the flexibility of being able to store using the JSON format. You don't have to have a strict schema. You can have schemas for JSON objects, but it's not a necessity. If you want to add an extra key on the fly, you can do so, should you so feel the need. So that would be an unstructured object which has no schema. Structured would be a JSON object that does actually have a schema for validation purposes.
Exactly what I meant.
Of course. So let me do that. Handles, structured and unstructured data objects. Commerce schema. All right.
Is this advantages for NoSQL or advantages for NoSQL?
This would be NoSQL.
Advantages for NoSQL is in addition to, I guess, to development, document handling structure, etc.
Mhm.
Is that also it's better scalability. So as your data,
Whoops.
as you have more data, because it is unstructured,
Mhm.
you can scale whatever types of data you want. Whereas the relational databases, you have to have consistency in the column naming, etc. And so when you have, if you grow your database immensely, let's say quick, in a short time frame, it's harder for you to manage that.
Sure. So to reiterate on what you said, and correct me if I'm splitting things incorrectly, if you're beginning to build a project out from scratch, some of the advantages of a NoSQL database is that because you don't have these structured objects and you don't have these schemas, you can scale better because the information that you're saving will change over time, and it will just all you have to worry about is just updating the latest objects while not having to worry about doing reverse migrations to old database objects to make sure that they are consistent with the schema that now happened 30 days after the fact. Does everyone at least understand that point? Yeah, sure. So if you're building a project out from scratch, you might not always know what schema you need. So the advantages of having an unstructured object type in a NoSQL database is that you can scale your database as your understanding of what you're building increases. And so for example, let's say you started off with an object type that only had one key and one value. And then 30 days later, you now have object types that have 30 keys and 30 values. You don't have to go back and update those old objects with the new schema because NoSQL can handle it. It can handle past data, and so you can grow your business or your project better. It can handle change better. That's what I'm trying to say. Questions on that?
So essentially, in NoSQL, you can put in your own like columns and stuff like that.
Yeah, your columns are your JSON keys.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's how you would expand your number of like keys.
Exactly.
You can't do that in MongoDB.
You can. So MongoDB is a NoSQL database. The difference is that Firebase is a NoSQL database. Mongo is just a different iteration of that same database style. Mm-hmm.
So every advantage that NoSQL has, MongoDB has.
Correct. Yeah. MongoDB specifically has enhanced querying options that are better than Firebase. So you can query. You can create more. What's the word I want to use? More optimized queries, more complex queries. Mongo also has better data persistence options than Firebase. There's something called Mongo sharding where you can store, you can replicate data across multiple nodes and then break up what portions of data exist in different nodes. You can access things better. So there's a lot of like enhancements when it comes to data storage, when it comes to data persistence, stuff like that. Mongo provides because it's a production-ready database. Yeah. Question.
So there's no like equivalent in Mongo of like SQL files where you have to like inject in instead of like just updating like a SQL file. You just go straight into you just go straight in and like change the properties of the documents instead of like dropping the table.
Yes. Yes, you would just change the actual data itself that you're inserting. Yeah. Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay. Cool. Any other questions on what we just spoke about? All right. Any other disadvantages or advantages of either NoSQL or Mongo specific advantages and disadvantages? I'll take like 2 more. What do you guys find?
Seems that multiple, like the major programming languages, well, it says drivers for every major language, or for every major language. I guess all of these programming languages connect or speak with MongoDB.
Yes, there is a lot of support for MongoDB by different languages. That is definitely an advantage. Anything else?
Well, this advantage of NoSQL and I guess MongoDB together is that SQL or like these structured relational databases, they are more kind of established, and so there's a lot of experts out there. And
Yes.
Great documentation. Whereas these newer ones are still building. That's what database.
That is very true. There, because SQL has been around for a long time, there's definitely a lot more experts and resources out there for SQL databases. So yes, that's definitely a big disadvantage for NoSQL. Yeah. So, and I guess just one more, my own personal disadvantage of NoSQL is that because sometimes through this bootcamp, they teach you NoSQL because it's easier to get into because it's JSON objects and you're already playing around with JSON objects throughout the course of this bootcamp. But there is definitely an advantage of having a relational database because that provides business rules. Business rules can sometimes be difficult to enforce when you have a NoSQL database because the data structure itself could change on the fly. By forcing your developers to follow certain structured rules that exist between different tables, it can sometimes provide less madness that can sometimes exist with NoSQL databases. So there's a use for each, but your use case will determine that. So definitely keep that in mind.
When you say business rules,
Company business rules, yeah. Say what? Oh yeah, definitely. You can definitely use like your relational database for very specific needs, and then your unstructured data for like other stuff. I guess one example of that could be, maybe you haven't fully defined what kind of user data you want to store. So you could have a specific NoSQL database that just handles the whole authentication flow, and you can just update what data you store on your users as you figure that out. While your actual pricing and inventory logic is very solidified and already defined, and that can just live in a relational database. So depends on how you want to do it. All right. So then moving on, you guys should have just seen the supplemental document for Mongo. What channel was that posted? Okay. All right. Am I even in that channel? I don't think I have that channel. Anyways, it should be there. What we're going to do for the next 20 minutes is actually install MongoDB to your local systems. I'm probably going to give this 30 minutes because there's a chance you guys might run into issues, but read that that supplemental doc, install MongoDB. I personally think it's a lot easier to install MongoDB if you use Homebrew. If you have that locally, it should just be brew install MongoDB, and that's it. So if you have Homebrew already installed, I would say use that. or I don't actually know what's in the supplemental doc. Let me see what they ask you to do. Let's see. Okay, yeah, they do recommend brew installing as the third option.
You have Windows or you just SOL?
Well, that's why I'm giving you 30 minutes. We'll figure it out.
Oh wait, no, we have yeah, no, mine's so that
Yes.
So like a lot of like this thing's taking a while, so I just want to select it. But,
Yeah, sure.
But like a lot of computer science courses make a big deal of like searching and sorting algorithms.
Yes.
But like now that you learn like database stuff, they have some custom just doing
Yes.
what like in the real world are there ever points where you implement your own searches and sort of
Yes and no. One, usually time usually becomes a huge factor. Do I have the time to implement my own based on like, I don't know, some requirements maybe for work or whatever? And two, sometimes these, you've heard of the term ORM, right? Yeah. Okay, cool. Because SQLize is ORM. That's what I'm talking about. So, yeah, so these object relational mappers aren't always the smartest around. So if you went to do like a simple query, let's say find object 1 with ID X. The back-end SQL, because they all create back-end SQL to actually initiate on the database, that could be very stupid and very slow. Yeah. There's been times where I've found these object relational mappers who sometimes create 4 to 5 queries for a very simple task. So in that scenario, I would just write the SQL script myself and execute it directly on the database through my code. Yep. So there's been many scenarios where I've had to do that. Ruby's active record observational mapper is very shitty. So I've had to do it a lot when I used to do Ruby. So you can keep that in mind. You had a second question. No. You said the algorithms, sorting algorithms. Yeah, there's always room for improvement. If you feel like you can write one that's better than what's generically out there, go ahead. Yeah. And then put it on GitHub. Let everybody else use it. Yeah.
I get like sometimes you get like conflicting things on the internet. It's like, oh, in the real world, like you don't need to learn these algorithms to hook up APIs.
Granted, I mean there is some truth in that. You don't want to reinvent the wheel if it's already done. I mean, and if it suits your needs, why you don't have to. But I mean, these algorithms don't get better over time if people just use the same old stuff over again. If you have a genuine interest, I'd say write your own and see if you can beat what else is out there. Yeah, and then people start using your stuff. And I hope you make some money. Copyright that. That's for sure. Yeah, but yeah, cool.
I said it too. What are you doing?
Anyone having any immediate issues?
I'm trying to get around it. Because it's like,
Still, I think it's still worth it. I don't think it's stopped me now.
I didn't stop. Well, now it's stopped. It says, to me on
Which one do you have now?
how many times it happens? I'm on the sun. He's only should I remember? I had to install it before.
Is that what you say all these things when you come into a ditch? Yeah, pretty much actually. That's what I do too.
Are we? I missed all that.
Yeah, you may have done it exactly.
Good question.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm getting that area.
They're just like mountain. It's like Pokemon start to get colors.
Yes, now it's out.
It's still the one that's
Ruby and Sapphire was
Well, like
Does it matter what we're
something or lava.
Nope. You just run that command and it should start kicking it.
Three different types.
Yep.
You can just take a cigar. That how you say
That's high level. I don't know if I can follow that.
Sure. Bless you.
how you get it.
What kind of
Tough question.
Why is because it is one leaf amongst many
Yeah,
layers.
it's all this.
I don't know if it's like it should just be I just think it's fun. It's definitely fun.
I don't really that literally makes no sense. Yeah.
Please. Congratulations.
I saw that. Oh god, take a reason.
Such a creative data.
Yeah,
Like, what does that mean? Just type this. Wait, did it just like it's like after it passed? Okay.
When I think logo of the water, it's like they got it so right in Avatar: The Last
You don't need MySQL Workbench. I said you don't need MySQL Workbench. Oh, to close it. Oh, that's interesting.
It says specifically my term. Yeah, there can only be one. It's like we're gonna have to.
Oh, yeah. Question. Cool.
So, looks like work is using.
That looks like it's already in use. What did you do? Did you start the service in the background? It's probably
entirely possible.
Yeah, I think that's the
Let's go through your history. Yeah, did you do this? Okay, so yeah, it's running in the background right now. Oh no, I did that. Okay, so do services start? Yeah. Okay, cool. Let's do stop. There we go.
yeah. So now you can try it again locally, and
Just run this command.
yes, just zoom on that. Yep. Now it's there, sitting waiting for connections.
Nice.
Cool.
Alright, thank you.
No problem. 15 more minutes. Is anyone running into any installation issues? Cool. Yeah, come on up. Let's figure it out.
So I'm making the directory
Okay.
now for the installation, and I ran using mkdir-p.
Cool.
But I don't see it here. I don't know if it's the same thing where you type in ls and it's going to populate all your stuff, but I don't see it. Unless it's that data slash.
Yes, that's it.
That's it? Oh, okay.
Cool. Oh, that was it?
Yeah, that was it. Because I didn't see. It doesn't matter that the dash DB isn't like behind it.
Oh, no, you got a CD into there and you'll find it there.
Oh, okay. Sweet. Thanks.
Cool.
Do you have a question, Ray?
Anyone else?
Yeah, try it one more time.
Okay.
So what's the shade head,
Dude, I was looking pretty raggedy.
No.
This last one's done.
No problem.
See if I ran these right.
Okay.
So now I did this process where I threw it in there, but it looks like it's just essentially sending me to that original.
Yes.
file.
So you gotta replace that version number with the actual version.
Okay, is that
Oh no, you have to find it yourself. So let's go to that
Oh, okay.
location and see what's going on.
Should I go into that database? Find it.
No, it looks like it exists in program files, MongoDB, and then server. Well, you gotta do the C, that colon, all that stuff.
I can do that.
Should I be concerned about this?
We can consider all caps right here.
Should I just keep going with like the backslash?
Yeah. 1 second. Because we could just
So let
navigate.
me ask you, just to make a difference. So I did all this stuff with this error. The error here. I get all of this stuff.
What's it keep?
Work. Did this issue, and then I had to go back and solve that.
It's not like on the
Okay.
they were trying to prove that Kanye took that from some other like previous source.
Every day.
Yeah, so they just like every day until there's a new line called which will not be until the end of 2020. Wow, I never did stuff. That's right. Repeat.
First locate the directory, and then open up system menu. System variables. Whoa. Oh, is this trying to get you to set up like? I didn't take me down to the very long. All of this should have already been done for you when you installed it with MongoDB installation.
Okay.
I don't think you need to do this. You should just be able to.
It already should be configured.
Should already be configured. It's like right now. Yeah, let's read that. Same time.
That's some real action.
Has anyone been able to successfully install Mongo on your Windows PC? Stuck on what? Oh, really? Are you using it?
Yeah.
Okay.
I've never used it in my life.
You can specify how much.
Oh, yeah. So that works. So here's a workaround. You can just execute the application itself, and it's running right now, so you're good to go.
Okay.
But
So if I search it now in Git, is it gonna come up? Like where you did MO that first time, is Mongo gonna now populate in there?
that's the problem. Let's see. Let's open a new tab.
Within this? I don't think you can, to be honest.
Okay.
I've never been able to use it. I think I would have to exit out and do it again.
Got it.
That now we should have.
Because you need to have access to all of these files.
Yeah.
That's what these
I know it's
instructions
Windows
are.
people freaking step down.
No problem.
Not for terabyte, I mean, it's 1,000 gigabytes.
This is why the Eagles are really that's what you're just trying control panel, systems and security. I got that one. No, I was just saying. It was a lot of fun. Yeah.
Tell it to look for every time we press enter.
Cool. All right. So path is what we want to edit. Double click that or it was like, okay, I think I see what's up. So now we want to add your place path. I got it.
And you might get this error. Yes.
We actually don't need.
Oh, we don't.
MongoDB, capital DB. Server. Actually, so now,
Less app at the windows, but I'm gonna try to.
blah, blah. Close.
What I'm saying, like, it's like you have a
And this is the typical terminal that you use
You guys get it out.
accessing keys and all that. Open up.
and then you put your portfolio. Do you know what I mean by it's like working repository? You just make a copy to your Git. And then it's like a copy of the project, nothing happens to the original project, but you can make whatever changes.
People will add it to system.
So if you want to go backwards.
See. He never complimented me. Successfully work. Close your current mission. Hit bash window. Reopen it. You should have access. No, he was biased against me. That's right. If you prefer video instructions, try watching these video instructions.
Let's see what happens.
Are we still talking about N64? Who are you showing these to? Some old news.
Oh, what terminal is this?
I pulled that up off of like the file directory or
Yeah, let's close those.
both of them.
You know, my aunt says the house is eating
Yeah,
out
let's see Mongo's there again.
unless I sneak them in. But I'm
Let's do MO tab. See what's going on.
From the shell. So I'm gonna go
problem is, I want to go to There were.
Yeah, it's because this is like 2 words.
Okay.
What if you did?
Yeah.
So we're think of C there now. Let's try this for a second.
Do you remember this song?
Yeah,
I remember this. I remember that guy just talking.
Oh, yeah. There's really, you got some of the wall hacker and
I don't remember anything off the top of my head. All I remember is that in 2006, Radio Phones was like big on radio, so I thought it was like a new song. But I looked it up, it was made in 1982. Why was it made smart radio? I don't know. At first I thought it was smart hacks.
So what it does is,
Little did I know that was going to happen.
always like when you're goofing around,
There we go.
you just need to click OK. How come you ran Mongo instead of took the M or the 10? It's just like the same thing.
Yeah, it's just like what I said, it's like where you're always. Now that we've done this, like, we need to create this folder structure. And it should be good.
Yeah, let me know if you have any issues after that.
Alright, sounds good.
Mhm.
Do you know where we left, or just so I, do you know where we left off in this like folder structure thing and these things, so I'm not blowing these things all second.
So you need this.
But like, that wasn't the beginning.
Oh, was it?
Yeah, it's not a good thing. It's just like.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
All right. Has everyone been able to install MongoDB? Could you raise your hands so I can know who's still having issues? Is that everyone?
We're not.
You guys having issues? Okay.
Let's give this another 10 minutes and then.
You have to go through the order.
Oh, no, let's install it in Mongo. You don't even need that. Yeah.
Someone's back there.
Yeah, you should have already been done with Mongo itself. So let's go to alternatives.
XP. It's just operating
I'm
system.
going back to Windows.
That's the actual installation.
I mean, it's still.
Yeah, that's what's on here. I don't know how you can verify though. Go to your C drive.
This song. Free fall.
Mongo server.
In the middle of the air, you're like high five.
Cool. Alright, so you already have that. You now need to follow the next steps, which is adding that.
That worked out better than I thought it would.
Copy that. You put this here. Let's just double click in this. Copy that. Now let's go to your system and securities in your
You can steal it if you want. That's what I do. That's where I got it. So you guys haven't seen my portfolio picture yet. No,
Oh, it's the one from.
it's so washed out and like.
Bro, like
Yeah.
police stations.
That's I got a haircut that day, and I'm like, this is better than I could ever do with myself. So
That's a good thing.
it's okay. That's not okay. I've seen worse. I've seen wow, that's real confidence, right? I've seen not as even. Do that for a living, just uplifting people. Or like, what's the opposite of a motivational speaker? Constant.
I was about to say, like, oh, I don't want another engagement. Mine, bro. God.
Double click on the app.
That's where there we changed the route. We changed this.
Copy this. Yep. Now what that's saying is you're setting your path to be able to use the application at that particular location.
Updated.
So you click OK, play again, reboot your terminal.
Three key rings.
Alright.
Wow. First it was a high Sierra.
There.
Two key rings. And I threw out the first software.
So the next step is you have to create C drive data, DB.
It's like music. You got caught by the first
Create a lock file.
so like there's something that replaced it. Like you have to go through a 6-hour interview process just to like get into one of those things.
Oh, this is
So they don't want to know. Yeah. And I'm like, piracy that much.
6 hour interview process.
No, the interview is 60 minutes, but waiting for your turn in line easily 6 hours. You can, but like it's like other people are waiting for their turn too. It's taking way too long. I was in college, so I had like by studying, I got to like learn about bit rates and like spectral analysis.
For the interview?
Yeah, for the interview. And it's like instead of studying like
Yeah,
I
right.
was still studying music.
Essentially, yeah.
All right. Let's see. So Windows, Mongo, DB, illegal, operation,
They do.
block file.
I mean, was I in the right route?
There we go. Here's this exception. Init and listen. Yep, this is exactly the one that I see. So, oh, here we go. Try this. We're going to change the user permissions on that specific file.
Okay. So should I go back out to my route for that?
Mhm.
Probably it's probably more complicated.
Mm-hmm.
Give the program start teaching
Oh, the sudo is a Mac command. Maybe we need to find the Windows. If you're blah 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 on a Mac, blah 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 on Windows.
It's weird seeing you with short.
Okay, the solutions for Windows. If you're Windows, you have to run as an administrator on the command line. Can we open up your terminal as an administrator?
How would I do that?
Where's the actual terminal application you usually use? Just type in terminal here.
Yeah.
There you go. Run as
So I was doing back before.
Okay. Oh, you're supposed to be Dash. Let's actually where's your Dash?
Just type in back.
Administrator.
I just like some RC picture of me. Actually, I have.
Sorry, just have to run it as.
Administrator.
Alright.
It needs higher privileges.
Cool, thank you.
Cool. Is there anyone else that we can move on? All right.
Oh, what? You got your portfolio and stuff?
Yeah, just edit it on Photoshop.
Yeah, your page looks nice.
Photoshop the turtleneck. Oh, mine?
Yeah.
Oh, this is Where do you see that?
It's just a shirt.
I mean, I've seen quarters.
Oh!
Shots fired. Bullets recycled.
Bullets. Trap car.
Pot of greed activity.
Yeah.
Like some
Oh, the trap part, yeah. Oh, wait, that's right.
They're all fake. It's like very nasty.
Roll back into the file of
That's all I want.
Did you see him on Hot Ones?
Oh, no.
So then he's like, after two or three, he's like, yeah, I'm not doing this anymore. So like, why the heck? And then the dude just kept, like, the host kept on going through. And we at the end, you do stuff. You actually played stuff. It was like,
Don't worry about it, Dad.
You show a manual where you set the environmental variable. So,
Oh yeah. Yeah. It's fun.
Like, it's
I just stay on my parents' insurance.
what do you mean?
it's like a, not old, like,
So, yeah.
I think someone we use.
So, I don't know.
Refresh
Control.
Change of heart? No. You guys ever watch
Administrator, Mongo needs
Alright, real
If you watched it, it's kind of movie. No one else watched any of those.
Cartoon. What does it say? It's
Code Leo code.
All right. Is there anyone else? All right, so we're going to move on with class. You guys should have all have had Mongo installed on your local system so that we can actually begin to play around with it. So on your terminal, I need you to type in MongoD, and you should see something like this. Well, not this error. Let me actually rerun that. Clear, clear, clear. Oh, heads up, if you don't want to use the data DB path, you can pass in an extra argument called --db path and specify a folder that you actually want to use. But this is optional and not important to the class at hand. So when you have MongoD running, it should tell you that it is listening at a specific port. Where does it say that? Yep, it says MongoDB has started. Blah, 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 blah. Yeah, that should be good enough. You guys able to have this running locally? Actually, yeah, the very last line says, waiting for connections on port 27017. Raise your hands if you're at that point.
I have a line after that. It says unclean full-time diagnostic data capture shutdown.
Shutdown detected. Did it? Did it actually shut down?
Well, it asked me to restart.
Some metrics may be
Okay, and then now from another tab on your Git Bash, you guys are gonna type in just Mongo, and let me know if that goes through correctly. What we're actually doing is we're connecting to our MongoDB database. So on one tab we have the database running, and in the second tab we have the Mongo client running. So you can now do things like finding documents, creating documents, things like that. Question? Can you create extra tabs in Git Bash? Like in the Mac, I can create like 2 separate tabs within the same terminal. If you cannot, just open up another Git Bash and run as administrator, and then type in Mongo.
what is soft R limits too low?
Soft R limits too low. Yeah, I have that same issue. We can ignore it for now. Actually, how about you Google that and get back to us?
I did. It said it doesn't matter if you're just developing.
It says it doesn't matter if you're just developing? When does it matter? Let's Google that. Let's Google that. When does it actually matter? Now I'm curious. All right, so does everyone have their client running correctly? Because we're now going to walk through a few Mongo, commands to get you guys familiarized with it. Yep, just Mongo. That's all you need to boot your client up.
It says R limit is related with the amount of memory allocated to process.
Oh, really? Okay, so there's like some system configurations you can play around with. All right.
After we do the Mongo D,
Yes,
runs and it says port 2717 or whatever, and we just type in Mongo.
in a separate tab. So either in a separate terminal or in a separate tab, you just type Mongo. So you're now connecting to your database. Yes, open another window. Did anyone run into issues with your client connecting?
Did you want us to run DB?
Yes, so in one window you'll have MongoD running, which is your actual database, and in a second window you're going to run your client, which is just Mongo.
I mean, do you want us to run that little DB command?
Oh, nah, you don't have to do that. I was just playing around over there. Let me do clear. Oh, it doesn't clear. Yes, that's your client, the show. All right. Hey, Claire. Could you Slack out the first activity?
Yeah.
Cool.
From content.
Yes. Oh, wait a minute. Do you even have to Slack out, or do they already have it?
Well, not everybody. A lot
Got
of people
it.
have it, but just.
Yeah. Cool. That works. Raise your hands if you're able to get your. Actually, raise your hands if you're unable to get your client to connect, so I know who to help. All right. So that means we can now progress. All right. So if we're about to Slack out the very first activity, and in this activity, I'm going to show you how to create a Mongo database. Show you some commands on how to insert into that database, into your database collection, because remember, a collection is a table. So we're going to insert documents into a collection, into a database. And then I'm going to walk through some find commands, some very simple find commands, and then we're going to move on to the next activity. So, first things first, and you guys are going to follow along. So type in what I type in. You'll have this file. It should already be in there in Slack for you to download and just copy and paste. But, sure. So the very first thing we do is use lesson DB. Use lesson DB. The next line should say switch to database lesson DB. Use will immediately create a database and access it at the very same time. It's a dual command, so you don't have to switch to it later on. So now, to ensure that you are actually accessing the right database, you can type in DB, and that will say I am actively working on lesson DB. Does any questions on that? Did use lesson DB not work for you? It's as easy as that. Yep. And then you could have a database per project. So you can create multiple databases for each individual project, and they have their own contained information. That might be a good way to store your data. But no, once you type in use lesson DB, it'll say switch to database lesson DB. That means you're now actively accessing it. You could switch to other databases. I forget what the command is. It might actually be switch. Let's find out. Switch, maybe test, or use test. There you go. So the command use is what you use to switch between databases. So I have two databases right now, test and lesson DB. But the one we want to use today would be use lesson DB, and I'm just going to switch to it. No, switch is not a correct command. That's why it errored out when I tried to use it. Use is the correct term. Yep. So use will create a database, and it will switch to a database. And if you're unsure what database you're actively accessing, you type in DB, and it'll tell you right there and then. Let me actually move this up so y'all can see. Next, we are going to actually insert some data. So I'm just going to copy and paste from this exercise and explain what exactly is going on. So what we just did was the current database, which is DB, that we're actively accessing, as you saw earlier, is lesson DB. We're going to say for this database, dot places is going to create a collection. It's going to create a table called places for you on the fly. And within the very same command, we're going to insert this row of data, which is actually, what's another name for a row? We just spoke about it. What is a row actually called in NoSQL? It's a document. So we're inserting a document into the places collection that lives within the lesson database. So what we just did was we inserted this JSON object, which has a continent Africa, country Morocco, major cities, which is an array, and then it'll tell you write results inserted 1. So that's your success message. That will tell you this command went through successfully. So definitely do that on your local MongoDB instances. Make sure that you see the right result insert 1, and then I'll show you how to query for it. So let me know if you run into issues with that. And feel free to insert more stuff. We don't have to follow the exercise step by step. Question? Yeah, I can do that. Does that help? Okay. Oh yeah, sure. Cool. Does everyone understand the insert command that we just typed out? What it's actually doing? Sure. Yes, so it is the table, but the table in NoSQL is called a collection. Yep. Correct. Inserting the document into the collection. Yep. And the collection, the document itself has multiple fields, which are the keys of the JSON object. Mm-hmm.
Where's the Casablanca Pez
Oh, it lives within the same object.
Oh.
Mhm.
Sorry.
Yep. If we pretty print this object right here, let's do that. Pretty. Did I not install pretty print? Ah. Ah well. Let's go to JSON lint. Just as you can see, just a typical JSON object that lives within there.
So you created the collection pretty much
On the fly, yes. You don't have to, in NoSQL, you don't have to create the collection beforehand. It'll do it for you if it doesn't already exist. Keep that in mind. That can also lead to typos. So if I had typed in, I don't know, places with a Z, it would have created the places with a Z collection. You can run into issues that way if you start fat fingering things. So just keep that in mind. All right, the next step would be finding things within the query. We would just do db places find, pretty straightforward. What this will do, it will find all the data that lives within this collection. So if we type in db places.find, it will provide us the object that exists, which is currently only one object, with its own specific, its own uniquely identified ID. This was not an ID that we inserted with the data, the object. This is what Mongo creates on the fly. You guys probably already saw that with like Firebase. Hey, how you doing? Doing good.
Thanks for subbing.
Hey, no problem, yo. Cool.
Touch base with you later.
Okay.
Bye.
See you. Oh, okay. I was like, who's that? Nah, I played it off though. All right, let's put in Europe. We'll insert another object. Yo, feel free to insert other rows so we can play around with it more. Let's do Britain. Britain. Yeah, that sounds correct. And then, I don't know, stop it. All right. So if we do find again, you'll see it provides all the objects with their own ID that gets incremented. This one was 5, this one was 6, and we have all access to all the other objects. Other queries we can do find.pretty. That could prettify the objects within the database, because as you can see, sometimes this can be hard to read. So you can do places.find.pretty, show you all the data, but in a readable fashion. Just another pro tip over there. And then you can have more explicit finds where we list certain criteria that we're looking for. So we can do find and then pass in a JSON object that would be the query parameters. And we say we're looking for just the continent Africa. And we'll find that specific object. Africa with a Z does not exist. And then if we do Europe, it'll find that second object. So this is pretty straightforward. What else? And then we could also pass in the specific object ID. This one is a little different because if you're looking for an object with a specific unique ID, you can't just type in ID. Well, actually, can you? Let's see. I want to actually show you guys the error. We're going to take this unique ID right here, pass that in, and try and search for that. Nothing happens. The reason nothing happens is because we're passing in a string. As you guys can see, this object ID is actually an object called object ID. So you need to wrap that string within an object ID so it creates it on the fly. So we do that. Let's wrap it. And now we're able to find that specific object. So just keep that in mind so you don't get confused later on. Yeah, those are dynamically created as you insert data into your database.
So they're not like whereas the SQL database, which is
Correct. This is just using a GUID instead. Just so you can have access to more IDs. Questions? Yeah, good question though. Any other questions?
Well, we can change that ID, correct, if we just add it once we create that object.
You could change that object, that ID. I wouldn't recommend it unless you actually know that you're looking out for duplicates and not like mucking up like your data.
Like if we're creating a database from scratch.
Yes, you could add in your own specific ID. Yes. All right. So the very next activity would be number 2. If you guys could walk down the list of stuff you're supposed to do for that. Let me see if I have that over here. I can pull up. Yeah. You guys are going to use the command line and create a classroom database. Within that classroom database, you're going to insert entries for yourself and the people at your table. You're going to have a field for a name for that person, a field for the row number, or maybe seat number in this particular scenario, a field for the operating system that they're actively using, and then maybe a field for hobbies. And then when you're done with that, you're just going to practice some querying commands. And if you finish early, check out the MongoDB documentation and figure out how to find users by an entry in an array. Because don't forget, your hobbies are going to be a list of hobbies. So if you want to be able to query for specific values in that array, check out the MongoDB documentation, and that should be able to point you in the right direction. So let's do this for 15 minutes as you guys get familiar with MongoDB. Any questions on what you need to do? Refer to the first activity as a reminder of how to create databases, how to insert rows. It's all there. You guys have all the tools you need. Oh, yeah, sure. Jane, would you mind doing that?
Yeah.
Cool. Oh, 1 second. This thing, it went away again. Whoops. Okay. That would be number 2. A seat number? I don't know. 1, 2, 3. I don't know. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, and as a bonus, I will pick a lucky student that will come up and demo some of the queries. So, guys get excited. More demo practice time, practice makes perfect. Anything that JSON accepts, Mongo will accept. Let's also let this follow through into break, and we'll kick class back into gear at 8:30. Let's do that. So if you need to take a break, feel free, but you have about, I don't know, 25 minutes to do this activity.
It's funny.
Mm-hmm. Feels the different keys. Yep. Mm-hmm. If you want to update, you would use the update command. But we haven't talked about that, so you can look that up in Mongo documentation. Mm-hmm. Hey, what's going on? Not much. Oh, you can do that up here. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Just dot, dot, dot.
Dot, dot, dot. Okay, that sounds like a command gone wrong. Let's try that again. Cool. Press enter.
Oh, wait. I'm trying to get to that one.
You get to
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, Reddit. Contemplating my places. Wishing for the end of this immortal
There's probably a typo somewhere.
Probably. Huh.
Well, you don't have to watch
One of my good friends is Emmanuel.
Yeah, that's my name too.
That's what's up.
Yeah.
Okay, I see it. Over here, you forgot to close the bracket for the array. Okay, I'll do it. Cool. Okay. Yeah, no problem.
Oh, got the sticker.
Oh, nice. Have you been to one of our events yet?
I haven't.
You gotta come out, man.
When's the next one?
When is the next one?
I mean, you guys
let me
have
go
a
there
meetup,
right now.
I can check.
Yeah.
I'm on meetup.
Mm-hmm. We are definitely have a couple meetups coming up. I think it's April 10th. Yeah, that sounds about right.
Tuesday?
Yes, deeper than your DMs. This guy's going to talk about how you can like find publicly available information about people quite easily.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so we're going to try and like people find people and stuff like that.
All right. Let me know if you can find me.
All right, bet.
I've been trying to be incognito. So
Oh really? Okay. That'd be a good test.
I mean, I'm sure you can still find, like, it's really easy to find someone's address.
Probably.
Like the last 4 digits.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's one of the main things he wants to highlight how easy it is, because not everyone knows how easy it is. Yeah, it's too much information on the internet, man. Way too much. Mm-hmm.
There's Fate Zero, Fate Stay Night. There's a whole bunch of movies about it. Yes. They say nice is where they summon like Hercules. Oh yeah. Is that a normie? No, it's so un-normie. I've never seen anyone in real life and also watched Fate Stay Night. You're hanging with the wrong crowd. Probably.
That was actually really I hate that one. I just I guess like the clown.
Oh, he already wears the turtlenecks and talk about his feelings.
That's exactly what it's like.
Mine is a turtle.
That's almost exactly what mine sounds like.
If you're reading this, it's too late. You're too late.
No, I thought I didn't think he was like this one of legends that started so popular. If he died now, he's already going down.
So like, if you're paying attention to it now,
Or you can't be honest.
Anyone have any questions? Data.
I thought it meant he's already.
this is what I Oh yeah, I'm not gonna hit it. Just we started. I'm gonna go
Okay. Looks correct to me. Okay, let's try it out.
It's like looking through my scheme.
Thank you. Sure.
Nice.
Yeah, I used to like.
Different syntax research. That you can find in Mongo. You're right. I almost forgot.
I gave myself an OS of that. Missing something after properly. Oh.
Yep. We'll talk about that towards the end of class. This is just to at least have some hand-on experience with the terminal. Pretty much. Sure. Need an object database parse update blah 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 blah. Let's see. So in the next update, I know it's just update. This will only update the first entry it matches with. So I guess so it'll try to match it based on what you've typed in, and then the syntax is set, and that's what you actually are applying the update to.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So I'm gonna have to retype what I had in.
Yeah. So this would be like the query section,
Yep.
and this is the actual update section.
All right. It's just saying I want to replace this or replace
Yes.
this with that.
No, replace this with this.
Okay. That's what we had previously.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
No, this is what you had previously. This first section is the query section. This is the actual update that you want. So you're gonna query for this. Is gonna find something with country Morocco,
Replace it with that.
and then it's gonna replace it with that. Mm-hmm.
Really? I gave myself the wrong one. Oh.
No. I understand everything.
So the query is instead of staying.
Oh, that's right.
So far. Work hard.
That's why it's always something. I have to make a way to everything.
I'm just getting all the.
I thought I was doing it about like Alex or one. No.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, so my problem was I put it all in one instead of.
Now the only item there is
Good to know. This is gonna be fun. It was like when YouTube was in its childhood, and this guy was like just one thing to do. Yeah, that's like a lot. Yeah, that's it. Oh yeah, huge job.
So what's the call if you have a second to go? Where's the expect that?
Although the guy recently sold the company for. Yeah.
Right
I
now.
don't understand Snapchat. Facebook offers fire.
Like that's the source of truth. Really, what's the dots. Because you're trying to missing like an argument or something. And honestly, like I haven't
He's just like traveling around. He's still just like fire. MySpace, I think was sold in 2001.
Yeah.
He's still like traveling around just taking pictures. Basically, the best life. And that was like a decade ago. That was 500. He did it for more than that.
Hey, stranger.
I'll never forget.
I don't know, it's fine. You like focus like a third day on, so I don't know. And I was like, I can look at the problem. I lied. I didn't see what I was. No, no, it's okay.
When you hold up like the pink colors when you fight them, there's a bar. I was like, that's
Yeah, I know.
I mean, it's like so good job. It's just.
Get the dot dot dots. Is that an issue?
Yes.
That's an issue.
That means somewhere along the line, maybe there was a quote that didn't close or a bracket that didn't
Jacked
close.
up.
That's
Yeah.
I think I'm just gonna handle myself
Do you like seeing your friends' Facebook feeds in chronological order? I hope not.
That's how much it costs.
What about the one person like someone you're you've never met before, but
Should I blast that? But only at like 50% volume.
Do it all the way, you know, balls.
That's literally what my brother says. It'd be weird if it was like a 12-year-old.
don't doubt
You get like you bullied by a 12-year-old.
I thought it was. I didn't think you were actually gonna play it. You get the free fall. You get the fall.
So like that's
Great, so now it's like positive.
Oh wait, yeah, I'm gonna keep the vibes coming. You want straight wide open? Realize that. Is it on same album?
You have to break down. You get tired of listening to it.
Breakdown.
And then refugee.
You like a Tom Brady like
No, I mean,
archivist. Archivist. I know all. My parents played Abbott. It's probably gonna be over here.
he did a great fight. What year did this stop?
I didn't even find
91.
So it's like,
I was 7 or 8 when I found that song. I found that song by accident.
Oh yeah. This Pandora count is by accident. Let's get that.
Yeah.
I had a
Are you on chocolate?
What can I say? Segregation. So when you're on Spotify, they give you like this recommendations of this. Could I see that? I'll open up Spotify and tell me which names you see. Yeah. No, I'm talking about these people and how you stop their genre. Do you know any of these default people? Okay. Have you heard of them before? I knew this person. Yeah, the real people. This one at least. I knew her from the university, but I don't know these people. So I think they're using her profile to advertise. That's literally what I think.
All right. So we're going to move on and talk about updating commands. Was everyone able to create a student's database and insert records into it? And y'all able to practice querying? Cool. Anyone excited about querying with MongoDB? Yeah. It's pretty much the response I was expecting. But yeah. So now we're going to walk through updating. So updating is pretty straightforward in Mongo. Let's see. So the very first thing you need is a query. So you're going to pass in two separate objects. One is your query object, and the second object is what you're actually updating with. So what this is doing is going to access the lessons DB. From the lessons database, is going to access the places collection, and is going to update the record with the country Morocco in it. With now is going to set that continent key to Antarctica. It's just going to replace it outright. So when you're updating in Mongo, you need a query, the object you need to find, and then the update you're actually trying to make. So let's try that out and see what that looks like. So db.find.pretty. Whoops, what am I missing over here? Places. You gotta access your collection. All right, so we have two objects, one with the continent Africa and country Morocco, and another one with the continent Europe and country Britain. Let's make an update to that. So places.update, passing the first object, continents. Feel free to type along with me if you want to do this in real time. All right, so that is our query parameter. Let's see what happens when we just press enter with that. Tells me now it needs a second parameter, which would be the update. So now I believe that is, what is it? Is it $set? Let's confirm. Yes, it is $set : and then the actual update you want to make. So colon the objects continent. Call this, I don't know, 7-Eleven. So we're now going to update the continent of Africa with now the continent of 7-Eleven. Let's see what happens. I made a mistake somewhere. I did not close my object. So let's copy and paste this again. When in doubt, feel free to just copy and paste and validate that your JSON is correct. Okay, this tells me immediately that I forgot to close something. Let's add a close block over there. That should do it. What am I missing now? Oh, because it doesn't understand $set. Okay, but I know this should be correct now. So let's close this over here. Okay, so now it'll tell us that it's written the result. It was 1, able to match it, so it found the object. And 2, it was able to modify it. You'll see this is very different from when we inserted information. When we inserted information, let's scroll up. We saw that the right result was n inserted 1. That means we're inserting 1 new document. In this particular case, we're just modifying 1 document. Question? Oh, Control C. Didn't on mine. Cool. Sure. So now I'm curious. Let's insert some more data. Where is my insert command? All right.
Just a real quick question. Is there any other place that we can check to see if the database this is
What do you mean the database actually exists?
meaning so if you created one.
Yes. You could do like DB. It'll tell you though that right now I'm in DB test. If I use lesson DB. What else? I wonder if there's a command just to see what collections are available. Let's Google that because I forget. MongoDB. Let's list collections. Show DBS. So show DBS will show you all your databases. Let's do that. Okay, that shows I have admin database, configuration database, lesson database, and local database. And then if I want to list collections, oh, it was actually already there. Show collections. It's pretty straightforward. Okay, and now I see I have a places collection. So just in case you forget what collections are available to you, you now know how to access it. All right. What was I about to do? Question? All right. So I'm going to actually add a third object with the continent Europe, and we're going to see if that update I now make to it will only update one of those objects with continent Europe, or if it will update multiple objects. So let's try that. So insert blah, 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 blah. Let's remove this. Don't care about that. Let's call this Spain. All right. Let's do this again. Let's close that object. All right. So now if I do db find places dot find, we have 3 objects. 2 of them have the continent Europe. Now I want to update just the continent of Europe. So let's use that update command. With Europe and the continent. Because we just want to see if it'll update all of them or if it'll just update one of them. Cool. All right. So just to reiterate, we have 2 objects with the continent Europe now. Let's see what happens when we try and make this update. We're going to replace the continent of Europe with the continent of Antarctica. It matched with 1 and only modified 1. So if I did db places.find, you'll see that we now have 3 objects now with only 1 object of Europe. If I do update again, it'll finally update that third one. So now, in order to update all of them, because it's gonna kind of tedious to walk through these commands over and over again, there's an additional parameter available to you called multi-true, and you would use that to match to multiple objects or documents within the database. So let's do that. So let's update our update command to do multi, and we're gonna replace all of those that were first initially Antarctica with Arctic. All right. As you can see, it matched with 2 documents, modified 2 documents. When we do db.find on places, you'll see that both continents got updated. Any questions on that? It'll only edit the first one. Another thing to keep in mind, let's see, what else? If we have an array that we want to push to, we would use the push command. Set will replace the value completely, but pushing to it will assume that the object is an iterable object, and we'll try to add to it. So what we have over here that's iterable is the major cities. So we're going to add an additional major city to Britain. So let's do that. So we're going to update, and instead of set, we're going to use push. We're going to push to major cities. And we're going to add, I don't know, Kent. All right. Yes, good catch. All right, we're going to edit that. We're going to now do Arctic. So what I expect to see is that it's going to attempt to find all the objects with the Arctic continents, and is going to try to push to major cities. Keep in mind, major cities does not exist in this third object. So let's see what happens. It matched 2 of them, and it modified both of them. Let's see what that looks like. See? This is one of the side effects of using a NoSQL database. If you don't have strict schemas, it will attempt to do whatever it is command that you're telling it to do. So in this case, major cities did not exist in this third document, and because it did not exist, it created it for you. There was no validation step that says this is not supposed to be created in this specific document. So just keep that in mind. That's one of the advantages and disadvantages of unstructured data. But as you can see, Kent was added to both places. If we replaced push with set, we should see it replace them outright. And now you have major cities, string value Kent instead of a array object. Any questions on that?
I guess I'm not saying the one above, where's the other Kent added, or where's the
Right here? Oh, wait a sec. You're talking about this one? In the 2 documents?
Yeah, up there. Like, I thought you told it to add Kent to both of them.
Yes, it's right here.
Oh, up down there. Okay, got it.
Mm-hmm.
I see that, sorry.
Cool. Any questions on what you see, some of the side effects? All right, this is pretty straightforward. The next thing we'll do is have delete an entry, which is just pretty much remove, and you pass the query that you want to remove, which is removing the actual documents. So let's remove that third object, db.places.remove, and we're going to search for continents Arctic. What do you guys think is going to happen when I press enter on this? Yes, I believe it should actually only replace the very first one that it matches. So let's see what happens. Oh no, okay, it removed both of them. So this is another reason to practice using commands so that you don't make a mistake. Because I would think common sense would say if update works a certain way, then why doesn't other functions work that same way? But as you can see, we can all be fooled. So yes, what is the source of truth? Documentation. Read your documentation. Or you will be on a production database, think you're doing the correct command, and delete everything. So keep that in mind. What else? So, okay, and how to drop a collection. We use dbplaces.drop, and that'll delete the entire collection, which is the table. And then drop database if you want to delete your actual database that you're using. But I won't do those just yet. Well, actually, yeah, I don't care about this stuff right now. So, show how an empty collection with DB will be removed. Empty collection. Oh, I guess this is maybe like cleanup data. Let's see what happens. Remove. Maybe removes everything. Let's see. DB.find. Yep. Places. Yep. It removed everything. So there you go. Another very dangerous command right there. Then we'll do places.drop, which deletes the collection at hand. So when I do show collections, it no longer exists. And then db.drop database, which would be my lessons database. Drops lessons. So if I do show db or show dbs, you'll see lessons db no longer exists. So yeah, so let's move on to the last activity. In this activity, you're going to go back to your classroom database. And Jane, could you actually Slack out activity 3 so they have access to those commands? And you guys are going to practice updating your your classroom database. You're going to practice removing items, adding to the different hobby arrays and all that stuff. So let's do this for, how much time do we have? Let's do this for 20 minutes. And then I will show you a much easier way to access your MongoDB databases and do inserts and removals and all that stuff. Cool. Any questions on what needs to be done next? Cool. And if you get bored, feel free to look at MongoDB documentation and find other useful commands that you might find useful. Yeah, pretty much. The the number 4 activity has a very involved description, but at the core of it is just practicing the commands, practicing updating your database, practicing removing items from your database, updating multiple documents at a time, things like that. Yeah, it's a very involved description right here. Mm-hmm. So, oh, go back to the assignment? Yeah, sure. Was it not slacked out? Ah. Hey, Jen, would you mind slacking out the assignment? Or maybe I'll just do it. Just do that. You did 3, and then we got to slack out 4 as well. Mm-hmm.
That's why I was asking you.
Yeah.
I thought you just said 3, that's why I was asking you.
Yeah. Definitely need 4.
No, so I can use the copy whatever. For me, so if you're chips by then it just creates the they did or didn't. If they didn't, it'll create it.
Oh, that identifies.
Yeah, thanks for doing it.
Let's try. Let's see what happens. It says match zero. So the field started open and must be okay. Cool. So then let's that's a because it's not already in a reg, you can't push to it. But if it didn't exist, then it would create a reg for you. So you can yes, you can run the set and set it as a wrap that in oh no, take that bracket outside. The same way you do it. So now you push to that. Yeah, no problem.
I don't like when you use my words though. The mouth's my shaking my head vigorously. Trade secret, but it's not a manual. It's my thing.
Well, yeah, we're gonna create the
You make it full.
You're trying to grab everybody. Query object. I found it that nice.
So it'd be an empty. No, but not empty object.
Sweet, I'll remember this.
Thanks. What would you say for that? And then Chase. Those are all my things. You want to share your things? I don't. You're lucky I said them at all. Okay, that's your thing. I was about to say that. Now that's your. No, that's what you said. Now it's yours. Apparently Michael's taking more rules and I follow. Jay's the one thing. I mean, hey, you know how you know it's not good thing? You have to say it's not good. You didn't call, you have to declare it? No. Of course you get
Mm-hmm.
Doing that. First thing I did that. I did the update, I did the push, and it worked. And then when I did DB Classroom Find again, display it. The reason why.
I'll forgive you for this one.
This new show collection. It's all things like I'm just saying. So our collection right now is actually I also really like so you did DB.name.
That's where the experience comes right there.
Right then and there. All right, and if you guys finish this exercise a little early, I slacked out a RoboMongo download link. It's another application we'll be using to access data within MongoDB, so feel free to download that when you get done with your exercise. Question?
So the give candy thing. So I would have given candy to everybody except for myself on the table.
Okay.
I have no idea how to use not.
Okay.
So
Is that the question? How to use not?
it says you doesn't support regex. So I don't understand what it is.
Oh, so not operate does not support operations with the regex operator. Instead, use / or your drivers, blah blah. Okay, so you got to write this out in using the slash notation.
I don't really know this slash notation.
Oh,
Is it just a quick Google search and I can just find?
yeah, you could probably find like a regex, I don't know, a validator, and then you can help you build your regex.
Okay.
So what it's saying is that everything within here is going to match what you don't want it to find.
Is the P the thing that it's comparing it to? The letter P does not start with the letter P, so that's a little bit more advanced.
Yeah. That's definitely more advanced.
Thank you.
Cool.
Do we want the Robo 3T or the Studio 3T?
We just want Robo 3T.
Okay.
So yes, just for clarification, not Studio 3T. We want to download Robo 3T. Studio is unnecessary. Robo 3T is enough. This is going to be the next application we play around with today. This would be kind of like your MySQL workbench, except for Mongo. So we'll get away from the command line executions. Okay, cool.
Oh, I'm not going to be around.
Mm-hmm.
Last name, I'm not talking
Oh, nobody's old yet. I didn't even around the name.
Correct. So push will try to add values to an array.
If it already exists.
If it already exists. Set will completely replace it. It will completely replace that value, which is the entire array, whatever it is you want to set.
Emmanuel?
Yep.
Which bravado are we done?
Robo 3T?
So when we do the give candy things,
Yes.
are we supposed to do it in like a single command, or are we supposed to go through like each single one and just update?
Depends on how you create your data. You can do it all in one command. Forever that way.
Okay.
less time for you to type off the match, right?
Right. So there is a way.
Yes.
Does it involve like?
Because you want to give everyone except for yourself.
Oh, really?
Isn't that what? Is that it? Let's see. Let's read those instructions again. What does it say?
Right. But they have like a candy status.
Yes. So it sounds like you brought yourself some candy. Change the value of give candy to true in your entry.
Right.
Okay. Oh, but then false for everyone else.
Right.
Got it. So you can use, as you used earlier, the not operator. You might want to show him what So, no problem.
Just read the exact same thing. If I did it like first time, make like a new array within.
So now you have an array
Of arrays.
Depends on how you set it. Okay, so you are now pushing an array instead of just a string. So you push a completely new array.
And it knows automatically pushing two.
Because it will always try to do
Should be two answers.
So now it's actually pushing it to the original code. Or you might not have two other arrays on the original code. Unstructured data.
Okay.
That's how it gets messy quick. What? 3 more minutes and then we'll move on. You should be already downloading Robo 3T by now.
I forgot. Is it Studio or?
Oh, just Robo 3T. You don't need Studio.
Are there any undos in MongoDB?
Undos?
Yeah.
Google it. Maybe.
I hope so. I accidentally did it.
You don't have to do that. Yeah. I'm sure the poor person filled out the No.
Oh my god. Can you believe that? I have to.
Okay, so we're gonna move on. Can you raise your hands if you have not had a chance to install Robo 3T? All right. Do you need some more time? Okay, cool. It's a process. Cool. Hmm? Supposed to look like this. That's what you should see when you open it, or something like that. Okay. If you did not get the connection, we can walk through that as well. All right, so if you could open up the application, you should see something that looks like this. Just a blank screen. And to the top left, you'll see an icon that means new Mongo connection. The new connection that you'll be connecting to, it already has it there by default, which is your local host 27017. You'll remember that that's what your Mongo D is actually running on the background. You see that Mongo D is waiting for connections on port 27017. So we're just going to try to connect to that, and then you should be able to connect to your database and see these icons. Was everyone able to connect to their database? We're going to try and troubleshoot. Cool. For the next 5 minutes. Anyone run into any issues? What you should see is your databases. So if I go back and create the lessons DB that I deleted earlier, let's do use lesson DB. If you right click on the connections and hit refresh, if you have updates to show, it should show you all your stuff. 1 second. Maybe it's because I haven't inserted yet. Let's try inserting. Blah, 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 blah. Okay. So I now have one row in lessons DB. Refresh. There we go. It shows my lessons DB database. I want to see all the collections within there. I'll click the little down arrow. I should see places. Places is my table, my collection. If I double click that, you should see all the objects right here. So we went through MongoDB, inserting documents, querying documents, all the hard way because there's value in doing that. But if you want to simplify things, you can just use this GUI and point and click on your different objects. So I can drill down and edit the data right then and there, I believe. If I right click and say edit documents, I have a nice handy screen right here. Edit my documents, call that Arctic, hit save. Poof, good to go. Now my object has been updated with Arctic. So, yeah. And if you want, you can actually type out your Mongo queries right here and run them yourself manually if you prefer that way, or you could just use the GUI. GUI, of course, will be limited in the options available to you. You'll always have more options using the terminal. So for the next remaining time in class, I would like you guys to do this final exercise. Let me see if I can pull that up, where you just play around with Mongo 3T and practice inserting data, querying data, removing data, so on and so forth. So you add a new, you can create a new classroom collection if you feel the need to do so. Just add more data, play around with it. I just want you guys to be able to see the differences between this GUI and the terminal commands that you were doing this entire class. Yeah, and of course, let me know if you run into any issues. Oh, question. You should be able to connect it directly. Oh, it doesn't have it there by default. Okay. So let's do create. All right, new connection, local host. That's fine. Yep. Thank you.
Okay.
Cool.
That's it.
That's it. Any issues?
Yeah.
Any issues connecting? Oh, question.
What you trying to download and install?
So you do have issues.
Can you see your collection? Nice. So that would have been really helpful.
Oh yeah. Are we posting it?
I just want to see.
Oh wow. Oh, like that. Great. You are talking about it.
Yeah, I unplugged the battery.
Yeah, that's what it's like a Texas. Oh, they don't have that.
Rousing chorus of fly equals fly. I've seen it before. Okay, like that. Yeah, you could pre-select that.
You could save it.
Yeah.
I didn't watch that. Everyone told me not to.
Heads up, in case, like, let's say you're at your terminal and you're updating it yourself directly from your terminal and not from Robo3T, but you want to refresh your table, you can click this little green play right here. This will execute anything that's within this box right here. So just hit green play, and it'll rerun that command.
It was something scary on.
So where do we put in like it says to like put Slack out your name and stuff? Which channel?
To do that
Random.
discussion. Maybe.
Oh no, yeah, I can. Should I put it in JSON or should I? Okay.
Oh. And if you're looking for information about your classmates that you can insert into your database, they'll be slacking it out in the discussion channel.
Slack out your own. This one.
Are you guys trying to? No, not today. Like May. Yeah. Oh, and they just have a bunch of cables. Every screen.
You become a connoisseur.
I go
Oh.
Fuck that.
I like saying already in the something real Korean. It means dear goodness. Dear. I don't know. That's a question you don't want to ask.
Couldn't find how to query the arrays.
Query the arrays?
Yeah.
How are you trying to query?
That's something about like that notation on there, and I just gonna get it to work. A couple of things I tried.
Oh, you can try to query for a specific value. Okay. There's like a
Oh my god.
keyword that's supposed to be used. There should be. Look up the MongoDB create.
Let's just reorient. Yeah, you can't understand what I'm saying.
Just try Google.
I don't either.
Querying Mongo documents. Querying an array.
Just realized you didn't go less than
Would it have helped us when we were trying to figure out users? Just like
that's actually one song off that album that I skipped. No, I did not. Because, like, I don't know, man, concerts are like sweaty.
No, I never got that.
You were the one who gave me
I know, okay, around with your headphones. It's because I picked the wrong kind of. If I hate sweating, I go to the wrong kind of concerts. But still, working hard is up there. I wish it was just like air conditioned seating.
all of the anthems.
Wait, which
Is
band
that a
is
venue?
this?
To like actually air.
It's a thing. But the titties are like.
It's a state.
Yeah. Let's get that.
You only get the read.
You got more keywords to give out?
I invited you as a collaborator. Should I send you the wrong one?
Hey Jay, did you remember?
Yeah. My scores because they're good coding stars.
But I mean, they expand.
They were your back pocket, right?
It's sealed for freshness.
Yeah,
So basically,
It might
that's
smell.
Oh, so just put the
So you can't count your ears.
Oh god.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
just like, oh well,
I should have listened.
new strings for this. So it just gives me
Like washing.
But at least the one.
I wish all these black t-shirts didn't cost like $20.
I was trying to
Oh, dude.
Cool. Alright.
really.
I'm wearing a black band t-shirt right now.
No, we did.
Question.
Yes.
Trying to refresh my but I just inserted a job.
Oh, my house is
It's got music,
bike riding, and house game shows.
I attended at like restaurants. For Manny it was parties, Smash Brothers, and Long John Silver's. For Michael it's Chris drinking, fiscal responsibility, and raising kids. I deleted Lee, so I don't even know.
Raising kids.
That's the chicken place. It's a chicken place.
yeah, we'll execute this.
I need bacon.
Okay. So if I were to go back to time.
Because I'm fishing?
Yeah.
You're right.
Yeah, just Ah,
I don't trust like
It has a lot of
yeah, there we go.
examples.
Cool. Thanks.
Trying to make it right.
Yes, yeah, definitely rescheduled my office. So probably trying to do it. I was looking forward to it. I think it might be free ones. Right. I mean, I had to cancel because projects. I mean, and then you guys canceled this. I was like, oh, yeah.
Oh. Yeah, I was able to. You might as well.
I've been to two. I think I tried.
You should made it out.
This Friday. So it's like any to me like any project. When you talk about your own project. It's like much more project we did. This is what's out there.
Oh, my bad.
All right.
See here exactly where I am.
Cool. All right, we're down to like the final 8 minutes of class. Pretty much we're done with all the lessons we're going to do on Mongo today. So you can feel free to continue to play around. We'll be here. Else, if you want to head home, feel free. No, just today. I don't know who's coming on Thursday. I can come again? Yeah, I guess I got to check with Sasha now because Kevin's not here. I don't know.
By the way, that was Sasha.
Oh, thank you, thank you. Thank you. All right, remote people. I'll catch y'all later.